Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about a really hot topic today. I think that no matter who you are, there's no way you have not heard about the furious debates about GLP-1 peptides. These peptides are the fat loss peptides. And for the last couple of years, they have been, well, nothing short of controversial. I've probably already recorded and released 3 or 4, maybe even 5 podcasts on this. And what's amazing about them is that they're under such hot dispute that there's so many different ways to look at them. And my guest today looks at them a little bit differently. So this isn't about good or bad. This is about you. This is all about you. This month, I'm giving away my list of top 5 peptides. And all you have to do to get that free PDF download, it's free for you. All you have to do is go to natniddam.com/nat5, and you will get to download my list of my top 5 peptides. There's a couple of bioregulators in there. There's a couple of long chain peptides. I think you'll find it pretty helpful. All right. Thank you so much for being here. A little reminder. I mean, you've probably heard this a million times, but if you haven't already done so and you're feeling inspired today, please make sure to leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on. And if you happen to know anybody, whether it's you or someone in your family or your network who could also benefit from this information, make sure to send it to them, because that's our goal. Our goal is to get this information out to as many people as possible. Whether you're using a GLP-1, dabbling in intuitive eating, or just feeling stuck, this episode is a must. Eliza Kingsford and I get into the psychology that no one's talking about, the stuff that lives beneath the surface of every weight loss attempt. From unmet emotional needs to the role of dopamine and hedonic eating, Eliza shows us why regulating the nervous system might just be the most overlooked piece of the longevity and metabolic health puzzle. My hunch is that you are going to want to hear more from Eliza. She has kindly offered this audience a free stress eating guide and 50% off of her Nervous System Foundations program. Both links will be included in the show notes. Welcome to the show, Dr. Eliza Kingsford. I'm really stoked about this conversation that I don't think we have nearly often enough. Welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here with you.
I almost want to position it as the other side of weight loss and weight regulation.
I like that.
So many people don't talk about, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, yes. The other side. That's a good way to put it. That's
it is, because we worry about our exercise. We worry about our diet. A lot. We worry about all the it's almost like the nuts and bolts, like the physical pieces of how we're
behaviors. We worry about the behaviors.
Right? Yeah. Like, and, you know, are we exercising enough? Are we sleeping enough? All of which are really important.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt.
But I think, you know, I'd love to invite you to speak about what you do and from what angle, because I meet so many people so often who are checking all the boxes on paper.
Yes.
And their bodies, it's like their bodies have crossed their arms and said, nope, this is not working. And they're like, what?
Well, I love that. What do you want from me? Yes. Yeah. And actually that's a perfect way to describe it. The way that I've come to explain it is that we are so focused on the behaviors. And you're right. I mean, the behaviors are necessary. We cannot deny that, you know, what you're eating, how you're feeding, how you're sleeping, how you're moving, what you're putting in your body, all of those things are important without a doubt. And ultimately, if there was a visual, I look at it like a pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid are those behaviors, because we can't have the change that we're looking for without them. Mm-hmm. However, what I think most people miss is at the bottom of the pyramid, the foundation of the pyramid is the driver of all of those behaviors. And so we think that we are cognitively in charge of every decision we make, right? I mean, we think that we're in charge of ourselves and we make our own decisions. And to some extent that's true, but ultimately everything that we think, feel, say, and do starts and is originated and driven by our nervous system at the very foundation. So as the nervous system interacts with its environment on a moment to moment, micro moment basis, it's sending signals throughout our entire body telling us what is safe and what is a threat. And from those signals, every single thing we think, feel, say, and do comes out of that. Mm-hmm. And so our nervous system is really the driver of all of those behaviors. And the reason I say that, there's a lot more to say to that we can get into if you'd like. But the reason I say that is because for the people who come to me, they're always saying, I know what to eat. I know how to move. I know what to do. I just can't get myself to do it. Or I can't get myself to keep doing it. Or I can't figure out where I'm going wrong in doing it. And it's like they keep bumping up against this brick wall, even though they know better. So trying to use that cognitive part of our brain to force ourselves into a way of being. And they're actually working in direct opposition to what their nervous system is telling them. And that's where they get into trouble. And as soon as we align the brain and body and get them working together in tandem, then I find either the things that they were doing before suddenly start working, or they find themselves able to get over the hump of getting themselves to do the things that they couldn't seem to do before.
So there's more than one thing at play here, really. And it's funny, as you were talking about the pyramid, I'm like, actually, it's probably, we should almost call it an iceberg, because it's all that stuff under the water.
Exactly.
That nobody really thinks about, right? The nervous system, everybody's like, yeah, whatever, you know.
I know, yes.
Right.
That's my favorite thing to talk about.
But the nervous system is going to drive your let's say your cortisol levels into overdrive. It's going to prevent you maybe from sleeping properly, which is going to affect your insulin levels, is going to affect your cortisol levels. It's going to affect your ability to resist temptation. You offer a whole program on nervous system regulation.
Yeah.
And on your website, you talk about trauma and stress.
Yeah.
So maybe what we can do is back up a little bit, because, you know, like everybody's had some degree of trauma in their life. Yeah. Everybody, you know, everybody's nervous system, especially these days, could probably be a little calmer. Because if it's not, you know, being November and May, there's some thing going on in the world or whatever. Yes. Right. So, and it's always been that way, but maybe we just hear about it more these days. But actually, I think there's more going on.
Both are true. Yes.
Both are true. And I saw on your website also, you do offer the nervous system regulation course before that, like people can take that before they even launch into your the big program, right? Yeah. Which gets you, which I'm sure coaches people in changing their behavior, changing their diet, that kind of thing. So let's talk a little bit about your background and how you kind of got into this and said, wait a minute, it starts here.
Yes, I'm glad you asked that, because I think in talking about that, it can help people understand just how powerful the nervous system is. So I mean, over 20 years ago now, if I can date myself, is when I got a postgraduate degree in clinical psychology. And I was trained in the very classical clinical ways of, you know, thoughts, feeling, behaviors, cognitive psychology. It was the years of psychoanalytic and things like that. But what hadn't jumped on the scene when I was trained in graduate school was neuroscience and work in the nervous system. It was just starting, but there were no neuroscience degrees in psychology. That kind of, I mean, there were, but it wasn't very popular. It wasn't a thing when I was going through my graduate school training. And so I graduated and went straight into clinical work, working with people who were struggling with weight and body image. I actually started in eating disorders, people who were diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and learned from that population just how powerful our stress and trauma and the impact of things that were going on in our lives has on our food choices. Because if you work with anyone who is hospitalized at 90 pounds, believing that if they just get the next 5 pounds off, that they will feel better, then you get a very clear picture as to the interplay between our emotions and our food patterns and control and the way all those things play out. Fast forward, I ended up working with a population who were, I sort of swung the other way, people who were struggling with their weight. And we were using clinical protocols and clinical intervention to help people with the psychology of eating who were overweight or dealing with obesity and trying to lose weight. And there were similar threads in both populations, right? And the burning question kept coming to my mind, because we would do all of this stress and trauma training and help them change their behaviors and patterns and all of this. But then they would go back to an environment and they would go back to the same patterns of behavior. And I kept asking, why is it so hard for us to change even when we really want to? Like, what are the mechanisms truly getting in the way? Because I'll tell you, after 20 plus years of working with people who want to lose weight, these people are not stupid. They're not lazy. They don't lack willpower. It's not because they don't know better. They've got every single book on their shelves, probably 2 copies of it because they forgot that they bought it 10 years ago. And they've read everything and tried everything. So but the burning question kept coming to my mind. What is going on here? What's happening in the brain and body? This cannot be as simple as just do it better. Just put it down. Don't eat it.
Yeah. Don't
because
buy
every
it.
time you'd say that to someone, they'd go, oh, thank you. I hadn't thought about that. Brilliance, telling me just to put it down. So that led to certifications, postgraduate training in behavior science, applied neuroscience, and deep work in the nervous system, and understanding how our brain and body work together. Because as you and I mentioned before we started recording, we do not operate in a silo. No. We've been taught that we do, but and what I mean by that is we do not pull a lever over here by, let's call it some medical intervention, and have it not have an impact over here on some, maybe it's psychology or some, some nutrient deficiency in the body somewhere. When we pull a lever over here, it impacts something over here. Our bodies are so intricately intertwined. Mm-hmm. And after learning and diving deep into brain science and body science, nervous system and neuroplasticity, I learned the intricate pathways and how those things are connected. And so when I say that, behaviors are at the top of the pyramid or iceberg, like you said, mm-hmm. the thing that's underground running the show in all of these scenarios, be it medical, emotional, physical, mental, whatever it is the nervous system that's pulling all of the levers. And like you said, most people hear the nervous system and they go, yeah, I know I need to be more regulated, whatever. I don't even know what that
meditate,
really means.
Breath work.
Yeah, exactly. That's what people think is sort of meditate, breath work. Maybe if I have some time. The thing that I love to do most is to bring this kind of complex physiology into day-to-day use. Nervous system as normal as brushing your teeth, thinking about your nervous system as normal as breathing, brushing your teeth, eating, moving every day, just day-to-day use, because it is so impactful for all of us. There are no exceptions. If we're alive, we all have a nervous system and it works the same way. So why wouldn't we want to learn how to use it, how to work with this thing that's in control of every aspect of our lives? You can tell that's where I got super passionate about. And then off we went into putting that into all the work.
So I want to hear more about that. But before you go into that, I'm curious though, when you're working with a population of people that are really struggling with weight loss, because let's say somebody's hormones are completely out of whack, like a woman is going through menopause or has been through menopause, her estrogen's disappeared, progesterone's nowhere to be seen, testosterone used to have that, it's nowhere. And then, maybe her cortisol pattern is completely reversed so that she's wired and tired at night, can't get out of bed in the morning. Or the microbiome, which we know is becoming, well, actually, let's do hormones first. And then I want to go to the microbiome, because actually both hormones and microbiome are going to affect the nervous system in a dramatic way. But mechanistically, if somebody has really dysregulated hormones or a completely, full-on dysbiosis or SIBO or whatever it is, there is a physical piece to the weight loss resistance that kind of needs to be addressed. So in the work that you do with people, do you kind of check those boxes first and then move into the nervous system work?
Good question.
So that you can, you're kind of removing the physical obstacles so that you're kind of clearing the way to see, okay, what's under there? What's really happening in here? Or is it another way around?
This is a great question. I mean, this is the classic chicken or the egg question. And I, because I'm I stay in my lane. I very much stay in my lane. I know what I'm an expert in. And so I very much will not dive into places that I don't feel like I can absolutely help you, recover, solve, and heal. And so I don't have a hormone protocol and I don't have a gut microbiome protocol, but many incredible people do. And that's why I work with so many people. They want me to come in and do my piece and I want them to come in and do their piece, right? So I very much stay in my lane. But that being said, It's an interesting chicken or the egg. So for example, when we're talking about how the nervous system is structured, I will very quickly breeze over this. There's much more to it, but one of our nervous system states is called dorsal vagal. And that is our shutdown state. Mm-hmm. And it's the state that comes after we have been in chronic activation for long enough that the system detects, I don't have anything left to give. I don't have any resources left to give. So I need to shut everything down, conserve my resources so that I can survive. Well, the dorsal vagal system is activated subdiaphragmatically. So below the diaphragm. Well, what's below the diaphragm? Our digestive tract, our digestive system, the way that we digest food. So why am I telling you this? When I have somebody who has SIBO or dysbiosis or chronic irritable bowel syndrome or trouble digesting, whatever it is, oftentimes, I'm going to say oftentimes, I'd really like to say all the time, but for purposes, oftentimes, most times, you're also going to find a chronically taxed, hypervigilant, overactive stress response that has now turned into a shutdown response that then impacts the gut system and that gut microbiome. Which happened first? Is it chicken or the egg? I'll be honest with you. People have been living in these chronic states of dysregulation for so long, it almost doesn't matter. To your point, whether it started as an actual physical symptom or it started as a nervous system response doesn't matter because it turns into a physical system that now does need to be addressed because the nervous system has now been in chronic activation for so long that it starts to wear out the other systems in the body. So back to your original question, well, which do you address first? Here's the issue is that if we don't address both, you might fix the hormones and you might help the gut dysbiosis or whatever is going on. But if we're not addressing the nervous system piece that activated that to begin with, it's not going to stick. And so if we're not doing both, then we end up, and I'm sure you've seen in reverse, I have seen people who've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on fixing these things, but never addressing the cues and the signals in the system that dysregulated them to begin with. And by the time they get to me, they are worn out, they are tapped out, they are tired. But that's not to say that it's one, it's never one or the other.
What you're saying is you have other people you will bring in or you will work with to address all those things. And it makes sense, right? Because the microbiome alone influences the nervous system.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And, there's a big question. It's another chicken or the egg question, right? Is it going up the vagus nerve this way or down the other way?
Exactly.
And it's both. It's like a circle.
I think because it's sort of like, well, I want to go here.
I want to do this thing. Yeah.
Right. But if I'm being completely transparent and authentic, as I always will be, we are a well-rounded system. We have to be a well-rounded system, Well,
and you can't have one without the other. I think and I think what you said that people will resonate with, it's that whole sticking with it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, how many people do we know who've lost, and I would call it the same 10 pounds, except when you lose 10, you gain 15, and then you lose 15, it comes back with another 5 friends. And that whole yo-yo piece. And I think this is where this has got to be the anchor of the work that you do is the yo-yo dieters, because let's face it, nobody wants to regain the weight. Everybody wants, if they have 2 or 3 wardrobes, there's one wardrobe they really want to be the one to be wearing all the time. Unless they've had some emotion, and we can talk about this a little bit too, the emotion, the real emotional trauma that sometimes will lead a person subconsciously to create protection.
Absolutely. There is emotional trauma. So there's severity of emotional trauma, just like everything else. It's, there's a scale of it. And without a doubt, we do see people who unconsciously create a protective response in the body, which then leads to behaviors of overeating and all these kinds of things. That absolutely happens. And there's also a level of, sometimes it's called little t trauma or life stressors or things that are just coupled with patterns of behavior that have been wired in so long and so many times that we assume that if I just commit to a diet and if I just commit to a new protocol, that all of that neural pathway, all of those neural wirings that drive us to habitual behavior will just go away. Mm-hmm. And this is my favorite. It's my leaky bucket analogy. I love my leaky bucket analogy. So let's say that you had this you had one job and it was to keep a bucket full of water, and you lived right by a stream, it would seem very obvious. You go to the stream, you take your ladle, you fill the bucket of water. Fantastic. I can complete my one job. Amazing. But then if I told you that there were holes in that bucket and the water was all leaking out of the holes, my question is, would you still go to the stream and try to fill the water in the bucket? Well, no, you wouldn't. Well, I'm not going to do that until I've plugged the holes, because if I keep filling the water in the bucket, it's just going to come out the holes. Well, this is how I think of dieting and exercise and all of these protocols. Those are the things that we absolutely need to do to keep the bucket full of water. However, they only work if you have plugged the holes that the water's leaking out of, right?
Right.
And so the holes in the bucket, these are the things that I see. Number one, people are dealing with life stress and challenges by turning to food, right? I mean, without a doubt, if you do not know how to deal with life stress and challenges without turning to food, you're never going to be able to diet and exercise your way out of that. It's a leaky hole in your bucket. We have to learn to plug that hole. And there are ways to do that. And usually it's a nervous system response that is driving people to turn to food as one of its coping mechanisms. And if you try to just remove the coping mechanism, the nervous system is going to find another way to get you to go back to that, because we're not stronger than thousands of years of biology. Our nervous system was built over hundreds of thousands of years of biology. And our brain does not have the capacity to just say, well, I emotionally eat, so I think I'm just going to go on a diet and then I won't emotionally eat anymore. It's not how it works. We got to fill that hole first before we can hold the water in the bucket. And so there's other holes, but to your point, we have to, we can't ignore that we need to have the right food and the right amount of food and other protocols and hormone, we need to regulate the hormones and we need to make sure the gut's working effectively and all those things. But we definitely can't ignore that the nervous system it's in charge of regulating our body temperature to within point whatever degrees to make us healthy. Do we not think that it's also going to be in charge of how we eat, when we eat, how much we eat, when we stop eating, all of those things? And we can't just override that because we decide to commit to the next diet protocol, right?
You mentioned something earlier. I kind of want to circle back to it. And you were talking about neural pathways. And I think many of us in this space and many of the listeners will have heard the expression neurons that fire together, wire together, right? So these learned behaviors over, I've always said to my husband, I joke, if our dog was a child, it would have the worst dysregulated eating on the planet, because every time we leave her alone, we give her a treat to make her feel better.
Right.
And it's not unheard of. Like, as parents, sometimes, our child feeling sad and we'll give them food to help them feel better because we weren't able to figure out how to help,
Precisely.
Hopefully we'll have developed better mechanisms to helping them to deal with their feelings. But in a world where parents, for whatever reason, either didn't learn to do it for themselves or are overwhelmed, we want to make it better. And if a lollipop's going to make it better, then that's amazing. And the challenge is that to a child, when that happens over and over and over again, lollipop means comfort.
Right.
And I think that's where you're talking about these neural pathways, like these beaten tracks through the forest over and over.
Yes.
And so you need to rewire that behavior. Is that a little bit?
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And to add a little bit to that, not only are they well worn, but the way that the brain functions, one of the brain's main job is to balance the body's energy budget for the day. So it has to make all of these quick computations about, well, how much energy is it going to take to talk on the phone and then take this walk and then eat this food and then do this thing and then do my work. And it does all of these computations very quickly. So what it likes is to take the path of least resistance. It likes to know how much energy it's going to use. And it likes to know, if this happens, then this happens. X plus Y equals Z. Ready, go. And so if it has learned this deep neural pathway that lollipop equals comfort, the brain is just picking up on that and saying, lollipop equals comfort equals good equals go. Even though you said, I don't want to eat lollipops anymore. I hear you. I believe you. But the brain doesn't care what you want. It cares what it knows. It cares about homeostasis, conserving energy and the path of least resistance. So when I say we can't override thousands of years of biology, this is what I mean. Just because we want to stop eating lollipops doesn't mean it's going to be easy to stop eating lollipops. We have to learn a different pathway. And the problem is we don't learn new pathways by force, restriction, deprivation, forcing ourselves, degrading ourselves. We don't learn safety through a lack of safety. And so we have to find a safe, aligned pathway, and then the brain will pick it up and it will follow it because it's not subjective. It will, but we're trying to force ourselves in the wrong way. And that's another thing that I'm passionate about teaching. If you think about dieting and you think about just willpower, just do it, just stick to it, just make yourself all these things, the body does not feel, I'm going to use the word safe, but I think that's a trigger word for some people because.
No, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Right? It doesn't feel good to degrade yourself into trying to do something different. And so your neural wiring is going to fight you. The body's going to say, you're being mean to me. Why would I do that? And so we have to find the safe pathway and then it will follow. We just haven't been taught. We haven't been taught how to do this or even what the functionalities mean.
So how does a person rewire that path? We'll call it the lollipop pathway just for ease, but
new term.
There's that whole conversation around decision fatigue.
Yes.
People can make so many decisions in a day. And this is why so many people, they do great on their eating plan right out of the gate.
Absolutely.
And for different people, it's different time of day. It could be 5, it could be 8, it could be 9, it could be midnight.
Yeah.
And now like you're under-resourced and plus you've been starving yourself all day because you had this iron will and you're like, yes, I got this. Like I could not eat today. I've got it. And at midnight, your defenses are down and you're done.
Yep. Yes. So with, in an attempt to not spend 3 hours trying to explain this to people, I will try and break it down as easily and simply as possible. One of the first things I teach people is about what I call balancing their nervous system bank account. To your point about decision fatigue, we have what I call deposits that go in each day and withdrawals that come out each day. And you know how a financial bank account works. You always have some sense of where you are in your financial bank account. You know that if you get towards overdraft, what that starts to feel like, right? It starts to feel like stress and activation and, oh my gosh, and worry, right? So our job, I teach people to balance their nervous system bank account because what's happening with decision fatigue is that by the time 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, maybe after you put the kids to bed and finally you have a moment to yourself, whatever it is, now your nervous system bank account is drained. And when your nervous system bank account is drained, not only do you not have access to the same executive functioning skills that you had at the beginning of the day, but also now all of your coping skills, your lollipops become more desirable in that moment. So we have this kind of red alert, drained nervous system bank account and coping skill, which is emotionally attached to the lollipops. You are ripe for all of those things that you promised yourself you wouldn't do in the morning. Bam, you are doing them again. And then you think there's something wrong with you. So we got to balance your nervous system bank account up the line, earlier in the day. Let's put it that way.
So you don't want to run it down in the first place.
You don't want to run it down in the first place. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. A lot of people think that automatically means, I need to journal for 3 hours and meditate for 6 hours and work out for 4 hours. And then, and it doesn't look like that. There's a different way to do that. So we balance the nervous system bank account better so that we have access to the resources we need later in the day. We also need to know if we're going to rewire something, we got to know where it's going. So what I teach people is, right now we have a GPS plugged into we have a destination plugged into our GPS, something that we know and have done a million times over and over and over again. We want to rewire that. We want to reroute that. But you got to know where it's going. It's got to go somewhere. If you were to just tell your GPS, I don't want to do this anymore, it would say, okay, well, where do you want to go?
Yeah, I want to go somewhere else.
And I want to go somewhere else. Well, where? Where are we going, right? Do I turn left? Do I turn right? So we have to know what to plug in instead. And so once we go through the process of plugging the new direction into the GPS, well, most people will say, well, yeah, I know where I want to go. I want to lose weight. Well, that's what you think that you want. And I believe you and I respect your desire to lose weight, but there's something that you want on the other side of that weight that we need to pull out. We need to uncover and discover that. The weight is a placeholder for an experience or a feeling or something that you think lives on the other side of that outcome. And the reason I know this is because, again, I'll go back to the population that I worked with when I first started my career. Those women who were 90 pounds in the hospital and being tube fed were certain that if they could just lose another 5 pounds, that everything would be okay. Yeah. There was something that it was not about the weight. It was never about the weight, because the weight never got low enough for them to experience whatever it was that they wanted to experience. And ultimately, I think people want to experience love and connection and happiness and freedom and empowerment and whatever words they are for you. But the weight is a placeholder for that. It represents something that you're not experiencing that you think you're going to experience once you've lost the weight. So we need to uncover that and tease out what that is. That becomes the GPS that we plug into your GPS system, so that now when we reroute you, it knows where it's going. And so once the brain and body knows where it's going, then we can start to use the tools to help redirect us there. There's a whole process for that.
What's on the other side of that is I will feel accepted. I will feel desirable. I will feel attractive. I want people to love me.
Yes.
I'm sure that's a big one, right? Is what you're doing basically disassociating that from the body, like you're recreating that without the body image being the condition?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. That's
We need to uncouple that from the weight or the shape or the size or the adiposity or the body or whatever it is being the condition for experiencing those things. It doesn't mean that you have to give up wanting those things. In fact, many people will find that as we uncouple that and decondition that, when they then experience those things, it just makes it that much sweeter and that much better. I can't tell you how many emails I get from people saying, these are the amazing things that are happening in my life. Oh, and by the way, I lost 60 pounds. Oh, and also I wanted to, it becomes this afterthought because it becomes an icing on the cake of the experience that they're having that they never thought they could have without losing weight first. And we got to reprocess that. We got to reprogram that, right? So if we're going back to your lollipop example, which was beautiful, if a child then is conditioned to only believe that they can feel good after they have a lollipop, then what does that mean? It means that they are solely fixated on that lollipop. Where can I get the lollipop? Where can I get the lollipop? Where can I get the lollipop? And their fixation becomes a lollipop. But actually, what is it that they want to experience with the lollipop? They want to feel good.
Yeah.
And so if we can remove the lollipop as their condition for feeling good and feeling safe, well, now they can feel good and feel safe. And then bonus, I get a lollipop sometimes if I want to, right? That becomes the healthiest way to achieve that thing.
That's really interesting. I think what's also interesting is and it's also like people with money. I'll be happy when I have X.
Same exact philosophy.
And quite often you get to X.
That's right.
Well, what I really need is 2X.
That's right.
And maybe I still need 3X or 5X. And they're constantly chasing and relearning to be happy. And then the X will come. And so you're doing the same thing in the weight loss world. So what are your thoughts on this whole area? Because I've had very mixed feelings about this. And I think people don't really know what to do with it. Quite often is the whole space of intuitive eating. Because I know that, like, for me, I'll have compassion and I'll say, okay, I can kind of see it, but quite often in the intuitive eating space, I sit there and think, well, if you have dysregulation to begin with, if you're going to just eat intuitively, I don't know that you're solving any problems other than maybe learning not to beat yourself up, which is a good thing.
Yes.
But
indeed.
You're not necessarily ending up healthier, which is not to say that you need to be a size 8 or whatever to be healthy. But I think it's a tough argument to say a size 18 can feel healthy and good.
Right. Yeah, interestingly enough, and I won't spend a ton of time here. When I was a young baby clinician, at the very first couple of years after graduate school in my career, someone set up a meeting with me with someone very high up in the intuitive eating space. Back in that time, it was 20 plus years ago, and I remember vividly her telling me, because she was learning about what I was doing, and I was working with a population who was trying to lose weight, and I was naive and young and felt, it doesn't have to be one or the other. We can love our bodies and also lose weight. We can do both, right? I was young and excited. And she very clearly told me, absolutely not. If you have a desire to lose weight, number one, I won't, we can't work together. We were going to do some things together in business and work. We can't work together. That's not possible. And basically shamed the work that I wanted to do in the world. Well, I happen to be very motivated when someone tells me that things aren't possible and I can't do things. And it just propelled my research and diving into that concept even further. What are we talking about? Intuitive eating, and can this be done at the same time? Anyways, fast forward, and that story propelled me for a very long time, because in my early career as a clinician, I would speak out, not against intuitive eating, because to your point, the message about needing to separate our worth from our weight, absolutely, all day long, day long. That, I stand behind that, and it's in every aspect of my work. However, what I was finding in the research and the literature, and I was on scientific advisory boards working with people who are studying these things. The whole promise of intuitive eating presupposes that we even have the ability to be intuitive about what our body needs. And for example, when you were talking about dysregulation in the gut, or if we have hormone deficiencies or serotonin deficiencies or dopamine disruptors, processed foods, all of those things are going to disrupt our ability to be intuitive about what our body needs, right? And so when you're saying, I intuitively need this much amount of food or this type of food, it's presupposing that we're actually being accurate with that intuition. And that always bothered me a little bit. And fast forward, well, now we know so much more about how our brain and body reacts to processed foods, how serotonin and dopamine and all kinds of neurotransmitters in the body are determining what to eat, how much to eat, the impact of ghrelin and leptin on the body, our triggers to stop eating, our triggers to start eating, and how that impacts, or how that's impacted by hormones. all kinds of things, right? Mm-hmm. So this idea that we can just intuitively know, it not only do I think it falls apart for most people, but also I cannot tell you the number of clients who have come to me who have spent a decade or more in the intuitive eating space, being shamed for a desire to lose weight. And now I need to untangle all of the harm that rhetoric has done, just to allow them the space to say, it's okay for me to want what I want. Yeah. Just to be able to trust themselves to say, if I want to lose weight, that's okay. I'm not a bad person. There's nothing wrong with me. Mm-hmm. So it's not and I always say this, if intuitive eating is working for you, you feel happy, healthy, and whole, please. Yeah. All day long. I would never take that away from anybody. But I find that it's, there are some holes.
In a world filled with hyperpalatable foods that have been designed to be overconsumed, in a world where we talked about the gut microbiome earlier, if a gut microbiome that is balanced in a certain way is going to crave certain things, it becomes, and if you're serotonin deficient or dopamine deficient, your brain is going to demand things to keep it alive. It becomes, and this is the thing where I've always really struggled with it, because I'm like, well, whose intuition are we following here? Right. Perfectly, maybe in a balanced new body. Yes. Like little kids, probably if they're not presented with hyperpalatable foods and they're just given healthy food, whole foods, they will move towards protein when they need it. They'll move towards fruit when they need it. They'll move. But I think by the time we're however old we are, we've had whatever life experience we've had, never mind the emotions that are driving so thank you for thank you for putting it that way, because I think that, to your point, it's not about the size,
Yes.
but it is about, what the drivers are. And I mean, for me, I think that moving into a world where we just want people to feel good in their skin, be able to move with ease, and to be healthy, right? Not have crazy insulin resistance or brain fog or whatever the case may be. Then if that comes to you at whatever size, that's amazing. Right? It's not striving for a cookie cutter result.
Precisely. Yes. And I mean, you can look at, there's so many things that have come out of the GLP-1 medications. One of them being, right? There's so many things. One of them being, if people were following their quote intuition on GLP-1 medications and it is completely dampening their appetite, they would intuitively not eat much food all day long, and then they're going to be deficient in a different way. That's a whole different conversation. But I think if we're relying, to your point, whose intuition and what does intuition really mean when it comes to amount of food, type of food, food that will support us or malnourish us, whatever it is, I think to teach somebody that the cues and signals that we're getting are intuitive versus the cues and signals that we're getting are as a product of hyperpalatability or a appetite suppressant or a stress trigger or a dopamine response. I mean, it's presupposing something that, if I'm honest, I think with all of the things in the way, I don't know that we are naturally living in a world where we can be, quote, intuitive about our food anymore.
Right. So, yeah, I agree with you. If you're doing it, it's working for you.
Yes.
That's amazing. But you brought up GLP-1s, which is where I was going to take us next anyway, because, we're coming into the home stretch and we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Like GLP-1s, I think in many ways they've made a lot of people healthier, but they also tap into, I know personally a lot of people in my space who are teeny tiny people who will not let go of that GLP-1. They're hanging on to it for dear life. Yeah. And we see it a lot. I think we see it a lot in the postmenopausal women's space because after menopause, we pack on the weight. We can't take it off. We finally find something that takes it off. And it's like, I'm not going back. I'm not going back to Lumpyville. No. I'm digging the bikini body. Yeah. So let's unpack GLP-1s a bit, because I know that you support people with GLP-1s, and I'm a supporter of GLP-1s, but I can see where they're going to dovetail with some of this nervous system dysregulation, some of these behaviors or these tendencies that people might have, and kind of enable that whole piece of it. So I don't want to, people know who listens to this podcast, they've heard me rant enough, eat a protein forward diet, blah, blah, blah. But let's talk about your piece, what you're seeing in your world.
Definitely. And to be clear, I do not do any prescribing. People do not get medications from me in any way, shape, or form. It's interesting because my program and the structure of the program, it does not change whether or not people are taking GLP-1s or not, because it is not based in that outside influence. It's based from the inside out. And so when I say I support people on GLP-1s, what that means is that the same principles that apply underneath in the iceberg are going to be at play, whether or not you're using a medication, whether or not you're using a diet, whether or not you're fasting, whether or not it doesn't matter. It's the same. And so here's what I'm seeing is that I think we probably can all agree at this point that used in the right dosage, and I stay out of all of the medical, I don't need to talk about the risks and the dosage and the medical side of it. We're going to assume that people are doing their research on that. Let's assume that people are doing their research on that. They're an effective tool. They're an effective tool. They are probably the most effective tool that we've had to date for appetite suppressant, reducing the food noise, things like that, enough so that people can eat less and hopefully eating in a way that supports their body. I'm with you. Protein forward, making sure that they're weightlifting for strength and muscle retention, enough movement and well, I mean, all kinds of things, right? There are ways to do this correctly. And when they're done correctly, they're very effective tools. However, what I'm also seeing is, and this, you and I were having a moment before we started recording about how this psychology piece is a little bit underground. It's a thing that no one really talks about. And here's why is by the time people come to me, if they have tried a GLP-1, here's what I'm hearing. Number one, it didn't work for them. I'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. Number two, they felt terrible off of them, but now they're terrified to go off of them, right? Mm-hmm. They felt terrible on them, but now they're terrified to go off of them. Number three, and this is the thing that I'm paying such close attention to, they just feel kind of meh. They feel depressed, anxious, the things in their life that possibly were being held at bay because of all of their focus on if I just lose weight, if I just lose weight, if I just lose weight, right? Now, all of a sudden the weight loss comes off and underneath the things start to bubble up to the surface that the attention to losing weight really pushed down for a while. Those things start to bubble up and people are starting to have a difficult emotional response to their lives. And all of this goes back to nervous system awareness. And the way that I teach it is nervous system awareness. And I teach nervous system awareness because the world of therapy is just inundated with diagnoses and depression and anxiety and ADD and diagnosis. When you learn nervous system first, it gives us a completely different language that is shared universally by every human. Mm-hmm. For example, activation. We've all experienced activation. Some people experience it as agitation and anger and irritation and frustration and too much on your to-do list and racing heartbeat and whatever. You have experienced it. I have experienced it. We all have. Some people diagnose that as anxiety. However, it is activation in the nervous system. Shutdown, the feeling of overwhelm or can't get out of bed or I just, can't face my life, whatever it is. You've experienced it. I've experienced it. Some people get diagnosed as depression. But from a nervous system perspective, there's this shared experience that we're all having. The reason I'm pointing this out is that one of the things that that people are terrified of as they take GLP-1s and they work for them or they don't work for them is the stuff that's still there that they thought were going to be cured by their weight loss or by the food noise going away or by whatever, fill in the blank. And it's still there. And what is still there is this nervous system dysregulation. And as the world continues to get more difficult, more stressful, more inputs, more technology, more AI, less connection. You and I were talking about connection before the podcast, right? Nervous system dysregulation starts to build and the medication is not going to take that away. Yeah. And that's what people are starting to experience. And so when I've talked to doctors and they'll tell me, my patients, they're not experiencing that. They seem really happy. And I chuckle and say, well, it's kind of like going to your boss and saying, I really hate my job, but will you please continue to pay me? Like, give me my paycheck. No one's going to go to their doctor and say, I am an emotional wreck on my weight loss medication, but please don't stop giving it to me, right? Yeah. They're not talking to you about that. They're talking to me about that. And it's not good what I see on the other side.
Well, and it's what you're describing, right? It's what we said before, because it's when I lose the weight, I will be this, I will feel this, I will have this. And now all of a sudden you've lost the weight and you don't feel, you don't have, you don't, and you aren't those things. I will say that maybe that doesn't apply to, I mean, there are probably people who just needed to lose some weight and
without a doubt,
they just needed some help, right?
Without a doubt.
But I think
many people.
Yeah. And I think that the people you're seeing are the people that had this nut to crack, that they just took their eye off the ball and they were able to overcome it. But I think the other thing you said that's really important is there are plenty of people that don't get the results with the GLP-1s, right? Yes. They will eat through.
They will eat through it.
They'll eat their way through feeling full.
Yes.
They'll feel sick.
It wasn't about being hungry to begin with.
No, exactly. Exactly. And it'll overpower the body because, the GLP-1, as you know, works through many different pathways. It's not just about suppressing appetite, which is part of its magic. I almost think that, well, in a perfect world, people would be assessed before they started the GLP-1 to try and maybe do some of the nervous system work, maybe understand what they think is on the other side. Obviously, if you're carrying around a bunch of extra weight you didn't used to have and you want to go back to your old body, that's fine. Nobody's here to tell you shouldn't have it. But understanding what the underlying terrain holds.
Right. And that's the thing is, people don't like it when I say this, but hopefully they'll forgive me. We don't just we gain weight is a symptom. Weight is a symptom of a set of behaviors and or a set of underlying factors. And this is, feel free to jump in here and disagree with me at any point. But when people are struggling, let's say with maybe hormone imbalance or maybe inflammation or maybe insulin sensitivity is getting in the way, metabolic dysfunction in some way, we're actually really talking about the last 5, 10, 15 pounds where we're fine tuning, perhaps some hormonal regulation, maybe 20. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think it depends, right? Like I think it depends. I think there are certain, and the thing is, it's not prevalent, right? But there are certain hormonal imbalances. If they're left to their own devices, people can become morbidly obese. Like I know people who literally will starve themselves and continue to gain weight. Like it doesn't, the physics doesn't line up.
Yeah.
Right?
And so interestingly, so this is such an interesting question, because what I have found in my practice is that there will be how do I say it? The mental load of dieting is so strong that they will feel like they are starving themselves. They will convince that they are starving themselves, but the pendulum swings just enough that they will overeat and overconsume to make up for any caloric deficit that they were in the days where they were eating 800, 900, whatever calories. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't take much to reduce that deficit. And and you tell me, but in 20 years of doing this, when I ask the right questions and get to the right, so I had, this is not, not even making this up. I had one gal who was working with a very prominent dietitian in LA, very fancy, and God bless her. She, the dietitian just kept saying, just eat less, because I don't understand what's going on here. And we would get into the work. And one day she said, Eliza, I'm night eating. I'm waking up at night and I'm eating at night. And I had no idea that I was doing it. And the only reason she knows is because her husband was gone and she has a baby. So there's no one else eating in the house. And there were wrappers everywhere in the trash can. She didn't even know that she was doing it.
Sleep eating.
Exactly. So the nervous system is so powerful that it's saying, you are not giving me nutrients. And she's like, I cannot lose weight. She found wrappers and wrappers and wrappers, right? So she's over, the body at the moment where she's asleep is over consuming food enough to keep her gaining weight or not losing weight, even though during the day she's genuinely eating 800 calories, right? Mm-hmm. All I'm saying is, yes. Are there outliers? 100%, right? I'm certain there are outliers, but for the most part, when we're talking about what the GLP-1s are doing for people, they are removing the symptoms of eating beyond our caloric needs, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that is keeping ourselves full longer so we're not driving ourselves to eat, or reducing our appetite so we're not eating as much, or, whatever it is, or balancing the blood sugar so that we're not getting cravings.
At their best, they put people back in the driver's seat of what they eat, when they eat,
right,
and how they eat, right? I think that in a best case scenario, people use that power responsibly and eat a nutrient dense diet that nourishes the body. They, like you said, they lift, they do all the things. They retrain their palate so that they lose that hyperpalatability, the draw to hyperpalatable foods, that kind of stuff. But I think that humans are human. People are people, right? Indeed. We want to find the quick fix.
Yes.
And this gives us an easy solution.
It does.
To the visible problem. But to your point, it doesn't really, in many cases, and this is not sweeping, because obviously there are people who just needed to lose the last 10 pounds, and this is the thing that helped them to do it.
Right.
But I think in the cases that you're seeing where people are still unhappy and they're not able to either appreciate where they are or their body has found another way to fight them. Like, I see people who crank up the dose.
Yes.
And actually start going backwards.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing is that, number one, I am all for everyone finding their path to their happiest and healthiest life in whatever way they want to live it. Mm-hmm. So if people are having success and they're happy and they're thriving, awesome. I mean, that is what I want for people. I have found that the people have had the most success when they're doing both, when they're using a tool that's really helping them for something that is hard. Your brain and body is going to fight you when you start to lose weight, and it's going to fight you to stay the same. And we have to do the work to overcome that. And that's hard. So if we have a tool that helps us, I'm here for it. Let's use the tools at our disposal. However, I think the people that are having the most, that I'm seeing that are having the most success with it is when they're using the tool. And just like you said, they're using this time as a way to restructure and rewire their relationship with food. When they were driving towards food, what type of foods they were eating, how much is enough to satiate them, uncoupling some of these emotional responses with food, uncoupling fear, using the time to really do that work in a way where the food noise or the food chatter has released enough that it's easier for them to make healthy decisions. Mm-hmm. Then it's a really, really already powerful tool that's now got some serious jet fuel. I think the things that I'm concerned about for the future are, when we were talking about those levers and silos, I do believe that there are other levers being pulled in the body that we don't really even quite know about yet, that I think we'll see some rebounding and impact of, whether that be our serotonin production. I mean, when these GLPs are working on the receptors in the brain that are responsible for hedonic eating, right? Mm-hmm. There's not really a way to isolate hedonic pleasure just from food, right? So then all of the hedonic pleasures in life, right? So we're talking, sex and connection and party and happiness and joy and bliss, that gets dampened, right, for a number of people. And what we're finding is, and this is just anecdotally, this isn't researched yet, although I do believe there will be some, at first there's this increase in happiness and pleasure because the weight loss is coming off, right? And people are going, yes, finally, this thing that I love. But after all of that settles a little bit, then we'll really start to see, and I'm seeing the impact of people going, oh, that dopamine hit of the weight loss joy has now settled out. And now I don't have that excess of it. The joy in my life seems to be not there in general. And we don't want a world walking around where people do not have joy in their lives, on top of a world where there's, we already struggle with that. So definitely not wanting to fearmonger in any way. There are ways around this. I just think that hopefully people are if they're using GLP-1s, are using it as an opportunity to use this tool to get better, to uncover maybe why they were eating to begin with that led to the weight gain, right? And where food was being used to soothe to begin with, which led to the weight gain. And it's a beautiful time to be able to do that, right?
One of the reasons why I really wanted to have this conversation with you is to start to bring nuance to this conversation around the GLP-1s, right? And you've got now two groups of people in the world, the GLP-1 shamers and the GLP-1 users.
Yeah.
and guys, and I think part of it is exactly what you're saying. Like, let's use this opportunity, whether it's practitioners or even just individuals who say, there's my answer. I don't need to do anything else. I'm just going to do that.
Yeah.
Where in a perfect world, the conversation with the practitioner or the physician is, okay, well, let's use this as a tool maybe, but here's all the other things that need to happen at the same time, which is programs like yours where people are doing the work and going into, well, how's my nervous system? Like, am I able to regulate, or am I using food? Because to your point, if somebody's using food to regulate their nervous system and all of a sudden they've lost their appetite completely and they can't eat, I can't imagine that that's a good thing. Like, now you're bereft, like you've lost your buoy.
Yeah.
But you're still in the water.
Go somewhere else. The nervous system will point you to another coping skill. That's how it works. It will go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, this is great. So for people who are listening, do you have like a little cheat sheet? Like, what are the 3 things to look out for that would tell you that you need to consider doing some of this nervous system regulation work on yourself or explore it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can get it to you in the show notes. We have a couple of guides that help people, number 1, understand if you're using food as a coping mechanism. And number 2, just an overview, sort of nervous system 101 that just says, here's the basic overview of what it is and how it might be impacting you in your life, just to be able to get a sense of that. So we'll have those linked up for you. But I think the truth is we're all dysregulated. We all get dysregulated throughout the day. And that's the way our systems are designed. We're supposed to get a cue, get dysregulated, and then hopefully come back to regulation. It's meant to be fluid and flexible. The problem is, in the society that we're living in, is that I find people are dysregulated for too long, and they don't know how to find their way back to regulation. And when that happens, we end up searching and looking for all kinds of different coping mechanisms. I mean, think about it, whether it's food or whether it's add to cart or whether it's alcohol or, drugs or even addiction to fixing myself. It's, I got to fix this. I got to fix this. There's all kinds of ways that we try to regulate from with the outside in. And I think as a general population, we're needing more inside out regulation. So yes, we absolutely have a couple of those guides that people can easily take a look at that and check it off their list.
Are there mistakes that you see people make kind of over and over again that just kind of holds them back?
Yes. And I would say the most common one is that if we don't know, like I said, if we don't know how to cope with life without turning to food, there's no protocol or diet or even medication, honestly, that is going to fix that. That's a signal that your body and brain is trying to tell you something. And here's, I guess, attached to that common mistake is that I think people think that it's going to take years of therapy and lying on the couch and, talking through their trauma and childhood to fix it. That's the beauty of the type of work that I love to teach, is that the way we got here might be complicated, but the solutions are actually more simple than we know. They're more simple than we think. And sometimes people discount them because they're so simple. But we do have to be willing to take a look at it and do the work.
So awareness of what got you here, but you don't need to go back and fix it.
No.
You just need to be able to see it, acknowledge it, and now be willing to move forward from
it. Use the tools to move forward with it. Absolutely. That's right.
Love it. Love it. Mm-hmm. Dr. Kingsford, where do people find you? How do they connect with you, find out more about your work, maybe sign up for a program?
Yeah. And please feel free to reach out and connect with me. I love, it's one of my favorite things to do is connect with people. So elizakingsford.com is the website. And then at Eliza Kingsford on the socials on the socials where you can find me there.
You do TikTok or you just do Instagram?
We don't. And I'll be really honest with you.
I don't either.
I'm not great on the socials either.
That's okay. No,
TikTok, but Instagram is where.
Good.
Go find me. Yeah.
Amazing. So Instagram and it's Dr. Eliza Kingsford?
It's actually not. I'm a licensed psychotherapist.
Okay. So elizakingsford.com.
Yeah, ElizaKingsford.com. Yeah.
Eliza, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And I hope our paths cross again soon.
Me too. Thanks for having me. This is great.
My pleasure.
Hey, folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider.